Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. I detect a hint of conviviality in the air, which is good because it's getting towards Christmas anyway. So welcome to everybody. Before we start the proceedings, I must read out this statement. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Thank you. And that takes us on to item 1, appointment of substitutes. Margaret.
We have Councillor McKay for Councillor Councillor Hassan, and Councillor Mrs. Hodgson for Councillor Bayliss. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does that mean substitutes are the majority on this particular meeting? Good. Well, all the substitutes are very welcome, and thanks for coming along. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations? No, thank you. Item 3, public participation. Margaret?
No public participation, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July. Can we go through those, please, page by page? Page 1. Any questions or comments on that for accuracy or items that are not otherwise on the agenda? Page 2 and page 3. Right, can I sign those then, please, as a correct record? Yep. And that takes us on to the first main item of the agenda tonight, item 5, the External Audit Plan 2020-21. Welcome to Natalie Ryan from Ernst & Young. But before we start on that, perhaps I could ask Mark Baldwin to introduce the report. Baldwin, thank you. He's in charge of our finances.
But not technology. Thank you, Chair. The external audit plan would normally come to this committee earlier in the year, but the effect of the pandemic and the lockdowns that we've been under have delayed the audit to the point where it has now started, partway through. So apologies for the fact that the plan is coming to you when the audit has already started, but the principles follow the pattern of previous years. Format of the audit is being conducted virtually this year rather than in person, which we've done successfully for the last couple of years. And so far so good. The progress hasn't been untoward, shall we say. You've all got the fairly weighty document in front of you, and hopefully you've had time to read it. So I'll pass you over to Natalie, who can deal with any.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Ms. Ryan, if you'd like to introduce the report, please, and update us.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. Yes, so as Mark said, this is the plan for 2021. I'll take you through some of the key pages, I think. I appreciate you may have not had time to read it, so I'll take you through some of those sort of areas that we think are just worth bringing to your attention. So in your section 1, you'll see these are really sort of the summary of the risks that we've identified in relation to this year's audit. There aren't significant differences compared to prior, but there are some new risks that we've identified, and that as a result, as you can appreciate, is more so due to COVID, the impact of COVID than anything else. Whereby previously we were able to rebut some of the income streams when we talk about revenue recognition. You can see on your page 11, there's a new risk around the recognition of income from fees and charges. Because it's a significant stream, we have to recognise that there could potentially risk for manipulation. And secondly, in the other risk there at the bottom, in respects of recognition of COVID-19 grants. as you may be aware from looking at the financial statements, there's a significant amount of income in regards of COVID. Some going through via the agent principal, agent practice, or via the principal. So that is where we'll be looking at the recognition of those grants. That's highlighting those two to you. On page 12, the valuation investment property, that's now a significant risk this year, just due to the number of high-value investment properties that the council holds. And the other items, which are inherent risks, are consistent with last year. And I'll take you on to section 2. I won't go into that's where the detail lies about how we're going to address those and what tests we're going to do. I can take some questions on those if you like. I can stop there if that helps.
Yes, thank you. If we can do it as we go along, otherwise members might forget their questions.
Of course,
members, any questions so far on the report? No, thank you very much. Ms Ryan, if you'll carry on then, please. Thank
you, Chair. Section 3 is the value for money. As highlighted in the early paragraph, it has changed this year in respect to the 2020 code. As a result of that, it has changed the perspective on the work that we're looking at and the criteria. At the point in which we presented this plan, come to this committee, we hadn't yet had the responses from management with regards to those criteria. We've now had that, so we're working through that with management now. So unfortunately, we can't give you a conclusion on the assessment at this point, but as soon as we have determined if there are any risks associated with the VFM this year, we will communicate with yourself, Chair, immediately. The practice is now, as by the code, is that we communicate that with you outside of the committee if necessary, so that you're aware. We wouldn't wait for the next committee, basically, to tell you. So that's sort of where there's some changes this year. Happy to take any questions if anybody has anything on the
Members,
VFM.
over to you. Any questions on that section? Councillor Agar.
This one, I haven't written it down section by section yet, but page by page, so I'm afraid I was slightly late in saying. I was interested in what you thought the threshold for not being a going concern would be for a council this size.
Brian?
Thank you, Chair. When you say what a threshold would be, obviously we will review the going concern procedures that the management undertake, look at their assessment of going concern. We don't have a threshold as such. Okay. Every district, every council, every Met will have their own procedures and their own assessment, and then it's for us to determine from the cash flow forecast that they have, what they're holding for the next 12 months, what the position of that is. That will be reviewed on a district basis. So there is no real threshold, unfortunately.
Okay. It's not that I think we're likely to be in that position. I don't. It's just curiosity. Thank you, Chair.
Of course. Yeah. Now your next section is section 4, which is the materiality, page 28. There are no changes to the principles and how that's been calculated this year. So everything's very much the same as last year. Also, the figures change because it's based on their gross expenditure at the time. We actually had the 2021 accounts to be able to do that, so that shouldn't change. Going forward, that should stay as it is. We do ask that the committee reviews that and is happy with those judgments. If you've got any questions, happy to take those.
Thank you. Any questions, Ryan, on that section? No? Next section, please.
Thank you. I wasn't going to dwell too much on section 5. I think pretty much talks for itself when you read through it, really. Just talks about our process and our strategy. Goes through a bit more detail in respect of what else we do. And the audit team section in section 6 just highlights to you that it's myself and Hassan, so the same people as last year. But we do highlight there that we will be getting some work undertaken by our pensions team. So our EY actuaries and the EYRE, which are our real estate team who look at the valuations. In particular, because we've highlighted investment properties as a significant risk, they will be particularly looking at those and other valuations as well. Up there, if there's any other questions?
Yes, thank you. Members, any questions so far on that section? No? Next section, please.
Thank you. Section 7 is timeline. I appreciate that I'll highlight to you the slight delay in the audit, but it's just bringing to attention what our plans are and when we intend to complete and report. And section 8 is our independence section, so I won't dwell on that too much. I think it speaks for itself, really. And that takes us down to the appendices. Any questions before we start?
Thank you. Members, any questions on section 7 or 8? Councillor Mackay, and then Councillor Agar.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, just to take you back a little bit. You were talking about the property investment. Mentioned those words, horrible words, significant risk. Can I just confirm with you that you're talking about the potential for significant, opposed to anything identified already, or the fact that
We will always identify an area such as that because of the value that it sits on the balance sheet, and because of the number of increased investments, investment properties in the last couple of years. It highlights the opportunity for us that there could be a material misstatement there because of the way in which valuations, it's an estimate effectively, isn't it? So therefore, we're relying on, management relying on the valuation by the external valuer, but that, again, because it's been highlighted as a risk, so there's potential there. We don't know that yet until we've reviewed it and our EYRA team reviewed it. Yeah, that's all right.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Agar.
That's it. I was just looking at page 38, the non-audit fees, which are for 23% at the moment. Have I got it straight in my brain that this composes of solely revs and bends and COVID-19 provision?
Thank you. It won't include anything that's not an actual fee at this point, so it'll only include it's the heads benefit fees. So because at this point, I know later on it does mention the COVID additional fees because of the work we have to do, but that's a scale fee variation rather than an actual determined fee, so it's excluding that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Agar. Councillor Lawrenson.
Chair, related to the previous question, note that there's a £21,000 increase in the planned fee, which I'm sure takes into account the extra work that's just been described. The question is, I presume, can you confirm that the dialogue that we discussed at the last audit committee meeting, whereby the council and the auditors were in some dispute about the fee, can you confirm that that dispute has been resolved finally?
Good question, Councillor Lawrenson. Mr. Baldwin, can you take that one, please? Well, we're going to the top here. Mr. Flynn, can you answer that one, please?
Through you, Chair. No, that has not yet been resolved.
Councillor Lawrenson.
Okay, so the question is then, we're looking at figures, provisional figures tonight. When will we be, signing off the audit report? Because I thought that.
Ben, can you assist us on that one?
Through you, Chair. In terms of the fee, as opposed to the audit report itself, we have, this is the fee for 2019-20, which is not yet resolved. So we've had dialogue and discussion about that. EY have made their submission to the PSAA, which is the final arbiter on that matter. We've not yet heard from them. The other two districts in Worcestershire have had a resolution, but as yet Worcester hasn't. We don't have any indication from them when that's likely to happen. Like that.
Ms. Ryan, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Got a bit carried away there. Other than echo what Shane has just described, we have had no notification from PSAA yet as to what the determination is going to be. Hence why within the 1920 is still outstanding, and until they determine what that's going to be. When they do determine what that is, it does close the book on 1920, and then we can move forward into 2021 fees, which I'm sure will always be another discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. I think you can guarantee there will be another discussion on this.
I'll be disappointed.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. On your timetable of deliverables and communication, is there an absolute date by which we have to have an audit report? having worked in the health service, we had to produce an audit report by a specific date. Is there such a thing in local authority land, and are we going to make it?
Good question, Councillor Johnson. Mr. Flynn?
Through you, Chair. Not exactly. There are proposed dates in the cycle when the work should be completed by, but it is not ultimately a final date. And if there are reasons why it isn't completed by that date, there are no sanctions as such. I recall, and things may have changed from my early days, but when I first started, I was working for a famous council in London, 5 years behind on its account. Till a new chief executive came along and said, let's just draw a line under that and start again. Can happen.
So my follow-up is, when do we expect an interim report or a final report?
Through you, Chair. We would expect that to be highlighted there, the area to be spring, and only because we can't guarantee when that will be. Unfortunately, things can occur that don't, without my control, without Mark's control, the management team. So the idea is that we will be continuing in January with a view to bringing an audit report to your next committee. So I think it might be March. Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Flynn, anything you want to add to that? Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for raising that. Good question. Any other questions from members on the report? The appendices, of course, would have been subsumed in the earlier sections, so we don't have to do the appendices separately. Right, any other questions or comments from members then? There being none, on that case, I put the recommendation to the committee, which is that we endorse the external auditor's audit plan for 2020 to 2021. That show of hands on that? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. Ms. Ryan, you're very welcome to stay. I know you enjoy this committee, but on the other hand, if you have other commitments, you're free to go.
I'll stay to listen to internal audit, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, members, that takes us on to item 6, appointment of external auditor. And Mr. Flynn is going to introduce this report for us.
Chair, with respect to, if Natalie's staying for the internal audit item, she may not want to be part of the discussion about appointment of an auditor. To avoid any conflict of interest, it would be better if we reverse it.
I'm very happy to do that. I'm very happy to do that indeed. But members agree that we reverse the agenda? Right, that takes on to item 7. Internal Audit Progress Report 2021 to 2022. Mr. Bromwich, it's a very full report, as always, we expect from you. Over to you, please. And if, as always, introduce it in a way that is consumer friendly, so people understand what you're talking about without the jargon.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it is a lengthy report before committee tonight. The report itself will be familiar to a number of members in attendance this evening. If it isn't familiar, then it is our progress report, which I bring on a quarterly basis, really to update the committee as to progress being made with the internal audit plan. Bring before members the ongoing progress of all the reports since the last progress report that was presented before committee. Now that was presented in March 21 as the July committee was dedicated to the annual report, and obviously the September committee was in fact cancelled. So the report is written as at the end of October, and it does bring members completely up to date with progress that has been made both from the residual reviews from 2021, but as well as the current plan reviews, which are from the 21-22 plan. Regarding the 21-22 plan, overall position on that is that we're making progress, and obviously we'll keep on bringing the reviews before committee for your consideration once they're finalised. If I can pick up on the 21-22 reviews that are before you this evening. There is one within the bundle tonight at Appendix 3, page 62, in regards to the Worcester Regulatory Services. Now, obviously, that particular service is hosted by Bromsgrove District Council, but we do report to all partners the outcome of the work that we do regarding any audits within that service. And there was one that was finalised on the 15th of October, which is included in your bundle tonight. There were no high priority recommendations reported. There was, in fact, one low priority recommendation is reported in full within the bundle. The Treasury Management was finalised on the 6th of December, along with community grants and contributions of help, which was also finalised on the 6th. Those are reported in the main body of the report as ongoing, but obviously things have moved on since the report was written, so I thought I'd just give a very quick verbal update in regards to those two. Treasury Management was a full assurance. No potential risks identified, and the community grants and contributions is a significant assurance. So again, good outcome in regards to that particular. Several other reports, mainly the core financials, are moving through, and this is the Q3 is the main quarter for the core financials to take place. And the ones that are currently in process are indicated in paragraph 3.9 on page 56 of your bundle. All the finalised reports will, in fact, be brought before committee next time that it sits. So those will start to filter their way through as we sit in. Regarding the residual reviews from 2020 to 21, those are also included in your bundle tonight. There are a number of those. Most of them are, in fact, core financials, which were picked up towards the end of the financial year. But there were a couple of high priority recommendations reported within those reports. And those reports can be found again starting at page 62 in Appendix 3. Now, the two areas that were identified with high priority recommendations were ICT and GDPR. But you will also notice on page 94 that there was an acceptance of a potential risk in regards to the creditor system. Now, it's not very often we have this situation, but it's not a situation to cause us too much concern in regards to the area that has been identified in this particular instance. Now, interestingly, this evening, due to timings, the ICT finalised report and the follow-up report are both reported in the bundle this evening. Now, it's not very often that happens because of the timings. So what you have before you this evening is the original position when the report was delivered, and also the updated position. So hopefully that will provide members with further assurance of the process that we're applying in regards to following up on the original reports. And you can also see the progress that has been made in regards to the implementation of those particular recommendations. Many of the areas reported on are now in the process of being revisited as part of the 21-22 plan, mainly in regards to the core financials, and we're working on those now. So a number of the recommendations identified within those reports before you this evening, we are now going back and evidencing the fact that the recommendations from the previous year have been, in fact, implemented. If they aren't, then we will be reporting on those, and we will be bringing those back before committee for your information. So moving on from the reports, if we pick up on the National Fraud Initiative, NFI, that is currently underway with the preparation and upload of various data sets. WIS is in fact playing an advisory coordinating role regarding this, but we are already starting to upload data sets for that particular matching to take place early in the new year. Regarding follow-ups, we've continued to report the follow-ups throughout the progress reports, and as you'll see in Appendix 4 on page 123 of your bundle, there are a couple of reports before you this evening. The homelessness has seen all of the recommendations implemented, including 2 high priority requirements. The discretionary welfare assistance has seen all the recommendations implemented. And regarding the ICT and the car parking, we're seeing steady progress in regards to those. That is set to continue. There remains some work to be completed to fully satisfy some of those points, but the overall direction of travel is positive for those particular reviews. We will again follow up and report further progress in regards to those 2 areas in due course. We report by exception in regards to follow-ups, and I'm pleased to report this evening that there are no exceptions for me to bring to your attention. The report also contains some metrics at appendices 1 and 2, so those are on pages 59 and 61. And also there is an update at Appendix 5 on page 148 of the bundle in regards to the position at the end of Q2 for the Quality Assurance Improvement Plan. That shows that a further action has been completed, and we continue to work away at that particular improvement plan, and obviously bring that before committee to show the progress that is being made. That, Chair, I'll pause and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. Always a very full presentation on a full report, so thank you for that. Over to members for questions or comments thereon. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Page 99, system users, declarations of interest. 2 people haven't signed declarations of interest for a significant amount of time. 2017. Has this now been rectified, or what kind of action is proposed to regularise the situation?
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Yes, this came up before when we had the briefing, didn't it? Mr. Bromwich, if you could update us on that, please. It is important.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, as far as we're concerned, action has been taken in order to rectify it. It was an oversight. It was a housekeeping issue. And we wouldn't expect it to happen, but it did. As far as will it happen again, whenever human intervention is involved, there's always that possibility. However, what we would like to see is that there is a regular process that takes place, and we would expect those to be picked up, especially in regards to the changes that are taking place within that service. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. Councillor Lawrenson.
Yeah, I'm always a bit mystified by mention of the system Pentana. I've been a member of this committee for several years, and I'm still not quite clear what Pentana is and what it does for this council. So could I use page 40 as an example of how Pentana might make a difference? On page 40, the medium risk attached to the authorisation of payments above £25,000. So, I mean, trust officers, I don't think anyone would sign off checks for their own personal benefit, but may I have an explanation as to how Pentana could eliminate that risk and prevent some selfish person, if there ever was one, from spending council money? So how would Pentana identify that issue? How would it sort it out? Sorry, that's a bit of a mischievous question, but it might help me understand what Pentana is.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Very fair question. Mr. Bromwich, can we have an explanation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Yeah, essentially, Pentana is a system whereby we can log risks, and it allows us on an automated basis to administer those risks and ensure that those risks don't go unmitigated, essentially. In regards to this particular point, which came up in the creditors audit, it's fair to say that what we do have segregation of duty, and so from a risk perspective, the risk is fairly low, because what you haven't got is a single individual, a single officer administering the whole system from start to finish, so raising an order, GRN in, and then paying. So there is clear segregation of duty. What one could say is it's perhaps not best practice, but it's not unreasonable in the circumstances, because when you have small teams, you have to adopt a pragmatic approach. And in regards to this, there are compensating controls in place to, again, mitigate any potential risk that we have. So even though there is the possibility of an officer taking a certain action, because of the amount that is involved, there are only very few officers who can authorise that and have the opportunity to authorise it. So we have a control there, a very clear control within the system. But from a risk perspective, we consider that it's acceptable within the environment that the decisions and the actions are being taken.
Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. Does that answer your question, Councillor Lawrenson?
I think so. I mean, I think basically it seems to me to be a logging system for recording risk. But correct me if I'm wrong, and this council used to have a workforce of 1,000, approximately 1,000, maybe 15, 20 years ago. I think the workforce is currently around about 250. Are we in danger of having 5 people managing all the work for Worcester City Council, in which case there'd be one person who is doing all of the purchasing processes and could get away with putting £25,000 in their back pocket? So are we not at risk of our workforce dwindling to the point where someone is doing everything and getting away with it?
Well, Councillor Lawrenson, equally it could mean that we're so efficient now we don't need so many staff. But, but I will let Mr. Bromwich do the technical answer on that one.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. The technical answer is not on my watch.
Mr. Bromwich, that sounds like a politician's answer. Nothing to do with me, Gov. Any other questions from members of the committee? Councillor Agar.
Thank you, Chair. 2 or 3 things, really. I'm vaguely trying to remember how long the car parking management issues have been going on. Can we remember that? It does seem to have been quite a long time, doesn't it?
Bromwich, can you enlighten us? I'm sure you were around when that started.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. There remains some issues regarding car parking, so they are ongoing. They have been going for some time. They are being addressed, as far as my understanding is concerned. But it's probably not a conversation for us to have in the public domain at this moment. In
that case, Mr. Bromwich, could you have a offline, as it were, conversation with Councillor Agar. And if anything comes up, Councillor Agar, obviously bring it to the committee or bring it to my attention as chair. Then we can see where we take it. Of course.
Thank you. I have great concern about homelessness issues, and I'm Vice President of the Boards, as I believe our other councillors across the chamber. And this is a very vulnerable client group, so I'm very concerned to know what management system we've got in place. I'm not familiar with the Jigsaw customer risk assessment system, so could we have a bit of detail on that? Because it looks as if it hasn't quite done the job we'd hoped.
Thank you, Councillor Agar. Mr. Bromwich.
Yeah, through you. Yeah, Jigsaw is the system that is used by Homelessness Service, with obviously third parties as well, and it's quite widely used. It was updated, but with the follow-up that is shown within the report this evening, you'll note that even though there were one or two areas that we considered there were some weaknesses of control, potential risks, those have all been addressed, and remedial action has been implemented. And the two high priority recommendations that we would have been particularly interested in have been addressed.
Didn't seem to be done as promptly as we might want with this particular group.
Mr. Bromwich.
Through you, Chair. From the work that we did, obviously we highlighted a particular potential weakness, and the action plan was put forward in order to address that weakness, and certainly from our perspective, that has been implemented. I don't really have any specific details regarding the particular cases involved with me this evening, but sure that if there was a conversation to be had, I'm sure that we could engage with our housing and officers.
Councillor, if you just use your microphone.
Sorry,
yes, thank you.
I think it's just that I'd want to feel that no one was falling through the gaps unnecessarily, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Agar. Mr. Bromwich, any comment on that?
Absolutely, no, I would agree, and that's one of the reasons why we do the work that we do, in order to identify any potential areas of weakness or potential risk, and obviously with any vulnerable individuals, the last thing that we want is for them to slip through a net. So from that perspective, I know that our housing service is working very, very hard in order to ensure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. Thank you, Councillor Agar. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Chair. Going on to page 72, about the ICT, a note there about the, and this is where one of those cases where hindsight is a wonderful thing, about the problems in relation to computers and having the facility for video conferencing from working from home. We're just hearing now tonight that we're going back into this situation. I'm just wondering, we've got that facility now, but is there anything else sort of sitting on the back burner that we haven't been sure about over this period of time that people are going to need in the coming weeks, and hopefully it's only weeks, but not months?
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Very topical question. Hot off the press, Mr. Bromwich.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Plan B is back. So that's been implemented as of next Monday, I believe. Yes, it is very topical. From our perspective, the ICT service has provided a lot of technical ability, which we didn't have prior to the pandemic. I think from our perspective, there is still a little bit of a rollout to be implemented regarding Office 365, and they're currently working on that in order to enhance the facilities that we have. But I'm not aware of any particular additional technical requirement that's needed. You know, the workforce, certainly for Worcester, has been equipped with the ability to work from home. Should we need to return to that, which Plan B is suggesting. But I'm sure that there will be a lot of discussion over the next couple of days, probably at CLT level, as to the implications and the requirements of that announcement that was made at about 6:30 tonight. So yes, it's something that we'll keep an eye on, and certainly with the rollout of ICT that has taken place over the last 18 months, I think it is fair to say that we have moved a long way forwards from where we were prior to the pandemic, and we have the video conferencing should we need it. We all regularly use Teams. We use Zoom if needs be, and how it impacts on committees, we're yet to find out.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. Any other questions? Councillor Lawrenson.
Sorry, I'm taking a step back and relating to Councillor Agard's question. He's been very upset by this, clearly. Can I make a plea that the word customer is not used in relation to people who happen to be homeless? I mean, I've reread this and reread this. It does appear that the word customer is related to housing homelessness assessment. Can we just simply use the word person and people and not have the word customer in that sphere of what the council does? Not everything should be reduced to a financial transaction. Last time we had a committee meeting, this audit committee meeting, I was waving around. Spared you from that this evening, but I might have to bring him back next time.
Well, actually, Mr. Bromwich, there are aspects of that I agree with, and this is, you've got a Conservative Green alliance here, so you better come up with a good answer.
Well, I don't think there's an answer to that. In as much as you know, I accept what you know, the point that is being made.
Yeah, no. When I say I'm agreeing with Councillor Lawson, this word customer, when many people don't have a choice, are they customers or not? I mean, what's wrong with the word passenger or client? However, let's not have a philosophical debate about that. I think we can find a way around that. Any other questions from members? No? Well, can I thank members for a useful discussion, very good discussion, and thank Mr. Bromwich, and can I therefore move that we note the report, and in so doing, I don't know how we can not note the report, we just discussed it, but do we officially note the report? Show of hands, please. Thank you, that's unanimous, very helpful. And that does take us on to the penultimate item, item 6, the appointment of an external auditor. And Ms. Ryan is now leaving, but thank you very much for your attendance. Have a safe journey home. And Mr. Flynn, the boss is going to present this one to the committee. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Chair. I don't get called the boss very often, so I'll make the most of it. Thank you, Natalie. This is a requirement and a statutory requirement to appoint an auditor through a due process. There are two ways that we can go under the law. One is to opt into a process and ask an appointed person to appoint an auditor for us. The appointed person for these purposes was defined by the government some years ago, July 2016. Public sector audit appointments were appointed as the appointing person. There are no other appointing persons available, so we go with them or we follow the alternative route, which is to appoint somebody ourselves. And what that second route means is that we don't have any more control over the process. We have to appoint an independent panel, so it cannot include or friends of members or past members or officers of the council. It must be wholly independent, and they will run the market test exercise and review the results, and we don't get any more control over the process. But it does allow us to go out of the list of potential appointees that the PSAA might find. Now, we've just note in the other options considered box, we've just done a market testing for our housing benefit audit work, because Young have advised they do that this year. And so we went out to market and got no response. 9 officially available firms that can do that kind of work, except for the one which is already doing it within Worcestershire. Chances of us getting an alternative local auditor to do slim, is a process which gives us no. The Local Government Association has written to the Managing Director, made the recommendation that we opt in. They're supporting that process. And in the absence of any strong reasons to go against that, recommendation is to the committee that we opt in, and the PSAA appoints an auditor for us. We've had some discussions with the manager and to see if there's any sense of what that might mean, whether they're inclined to go to a different firm, or whether they're inclined to keep them the same, or whether they'll do the same geographical areas. There isn't really a great sense of that. So I can't advise whether we're likely to get EY again or anybody else. All I can say is that it will be. And one other fact mentioned earlier, the audit fee decision. It's very helpful to us that decision is made by a third party. Not of course an argument between ourselves and the auditors. We have a different opinion as to what the fee should be, but it's the PSA that makes that decision. And without breaking any confidences, I can say that has come up with a compromise position for the other two. So they've not paid more than they did. So there is an advantage in having an objective third party making that decision. So that's not mentioned in the report because that news came through afterwards. It has to be by full council, and it must be by, I think it's the 22nd of March next year. So it'll go, recommendation will be. Need to take any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Flynn. I'll ask members for any questions or comments, but it does seem to me the decision is a relatively straightforward one on this. The alternative is simply an auditor panel. We conduct a local procurement, we lose some control, and there's no guarantee it's going to be cheaper, and it could actually be more expensive. So I think that the arguments seem fairly black and white on this, but I'll obviously take members' questions and comments. Councillor Johnson, then Councillor Agar, and Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, is the background to this a diminishing appetite in the market to do this sort of work? Because clearly financial auditors aren't getting the best of presses at this point in time. And I just wonder whether, they're shrinking back. I mean, they've consolidated quite considerably as well, so the market's pretty limited, isn't it? So it's not really much of a market, is it?
Mr. Flynn?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, yes, I mean, the Redmond review into the audit position the last couple of years recognise that there's been real difficulty. It's not attractive to audit firms. Quite different to their normal audit work because it has specialist requirements. So that has been recognised. It's likely to result in increase, to keep the market more buoyant, but that is to be expected. I mean, they are. So that will make a difference. Whether we'll see some more consolidation in the marketplace, so perhaps returning to having one or two big things. I don't think there's a loss of appetite because, as Mark will attest, it's a bit of a training ground for junior auditors, isn't it? So it's somewhere where there are advantages for the firms to be involved.
The experience in the health service, that you got fairly junior members of staff being trained on the job, so to speak. And once they got their qualifications, off they went. So we've really not got a lot of choice in some respects.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Agar.
Thank you, yes. I mean, that's a point well made, Councillor Johnson, and also Councillor Amos. I think it's a step too far into the unknown, really, to do the alternatives. I think it would be quite sensible to go with a preferred option, wouldn't it? I'm happy to propose that. And having said that, I'd like to point out a minor typological error in 3.1. I think you don't mean the year 34, do you?
Mr. Flynn, you're a man of numbers. How does
23
to 34 become 5? We'll have it noted that Mr. Flynn couldn't answer that question. And it's only a difference of 11 years. Right. No.
On the head, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Agar, for pointing that out. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. With Councillor Agar on the benefits of going with the PSAA, the hassle of going through the procedure ourselves and the costs possibly involved in that to get nothing better just seems a whole waste of time and trouble. No, would we get a quicker audit result? We wouldn't. I very much suspect it'd even be later rather than, well, this year is bad. If we're doing it ourselves, I suspect it's going to be even worse in future. And we've got COVID, which is an ongoing problem. We don't know how that's going to resolve itself going forward. We're talking about working from home and all those implications. So it doesn't make sense to step outside at the moment. Let's go with what we're used to and the professional point of view there.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Mackay.
Extremely quickly, I think the way that Mr. Flynn has explained the situation, we have what we've gotten is called Hobson's choice, effectively. And so I think the sooner it goes to the vote, the better.
Thank you. Well, before we go to the vote, Councillor Hodgson. Lucy Hodgson.
I too agree. Any other system, I think, is ludicrous, actually. So let's go to the vote.
Thank you. I've never seen such a keenness to go to the vote, but I suspect a unanimous vote here. But well, I put it to the committee, Councillor Agar has moved, I'll second or vice versa, that the committee recommends to full council agreement to opt into the PSAA auditor appointments process for the period 2022 to 2027. I put those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. I want it minuted. The Treasurer said he's got his sums right on that. It's 20 to 27. And item 8, any other business, which in my opinion is of sufficient urgency. Well, there's nothing that urgent, I don't think. But can I just wish members a very happy Christmas on the basis that the Prime Minister has said that this Christmas is going to be better than last year. So on that basis, I wish all a happy Christmas, and whether we'll meet in person or electronically again remains to be seen. But thank you very much for your attendance. The meeting is now closed.